Hey, writers. I am just delighted today to welcome DaVaun Sanders. Welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yes, it's very serendipitous that I got connected with DaVaun here, and I would love to introduce our writers here to the work that you're doing. So, DaVaun is an author and editor from Phoenix, Arizona. He currently serves as publisher and executive editor for the award-winning FIYAH literary magazine of Black speculative fiction. He is the author of Keynan Masters and The Peerless Magic Crew, the first novel in his debut middle grade fantasy series. His novel, Minecraft the Tournament, released this summer. Do you have that one too? Excellent. His short fiction has appeared in the New York Times bestselling anthology Black Boy Joy and elsewhere. He continues to expand his work in children's science fiction and fantasy for kids everywhere who deserve to enjoy inclusive stories. And when deadlines are scarce, he enjoys exploring the world with his wife and twins, touring himself hoarse for the 49ers, and any DIY project that requires outrageous new power tools. Do you have a collection?
I'm slowly but surely building one, much to my wife's dismay.
Yeah, I know. Whenever there's a chainsaw involved, it always makes me nervous.
Mine is small. I need a bigger chainsaw. I think that's
Well, I was so happy to connect here with DaVaun because this Minecraft novel is such an interesting concept for me in that it is a novel, but it is also tightly connected to like a franchise that is just humongous. And so I was hoping we might talk a bit about how you came to write this novel. Is this something that you had expressed interest in doing, or did, I don't know, like the franchise reach out and say, we would love him to be a part of this? How did that all happen?
sure, sure. I I think the main thing with that is that yes, the franchise did reach out, but the big part that I want to stress with that made it extra exciting was my agent. Early on, in the relationship with working on Keynan with that being my debut last year, but as that was going on, um, one of her points of emphasis for her authors is to like, I'm not just with you for a book, I'm with you for, a career and to build things. And that's always been something that I've been so happy with, as our relationship has unfolded. So part of that, our initial months was like, hey, if there was ever a chance for IP, like what would be like some of your dream projects? And through that list, was able to just kind of give her an idea of my taste, like what I was into, what I was excited about, what I'd love to nerd out about. Ironically, Minecraft wasn't on that list, which is hilarious. But I think just having somebody who kind of like knows what you're into and is just like, hey, and just like kind of it's kind of working, on your behalf behind your back. That's kind of exactly how this all came place. So then when the opportunity was there and she was able to bring it back to me, I was like, oh my god, my son loves Minecraft. Like this would be a dream to jump on it. So uh, that was the main thing. I think just being available, number one, having somebody who knows your taste, knows what you like to write, in terms of mood and genre and all that fun stuff. So all those things connected together are kind of what put me in connection with Minecraft and just didn't look back
Yeah,
after we got the sign.
I love that story because it's a beautiful picture of this relationship that you've established with your agent. And kudos to your agent for just always looking out for opportunities that would be available to you. And yeah, I just think that's very cool. So, because it's part of this franchise, then it's part of a series, right? I mean, there's other authors who are writing books within the Minecraft umbrella.
Right.
And were there certain requirements for writing this novel? Like, were you restricted to a word count or an age range, or what kind of restrictions did they maybe place on you, or expectations? Maybe that's a better word.
Sure, sure. I think like initially, it was understood that it was going to be middle grade. Like we kind of knew all that just off the jump. The a lot of what's cool about I think the Minecraft collection of novels is that they're all they're all together, but they're not necessarily related outside of just being about the game, right? So some of them are in game, whereas characters inside the game. Some of them are people who are playing the game, like how my novel works. And there's all kinds of different permutations in between. That's what makes it so fun because it's like there's literally I think they're up to like 22 now, and it's just there's so many options to choose from. So um, I think with how it initially worked out, like after me and the editor connected, we got the chance to just kind of like throw around some ideas. Um, I had a few ideas that were uh, that they were I'm trying to think of how to say this without being it
Less enthusiastic.
right. But some that were less enthusiastic for sure. But then I think one of the ideas that I originally pitched, they were like, "Oh, this is great, but it might be too close to this other thing that we can't
Oh,
talk.
sure.
It may or may not be happening." So that was a a restriction, I guess. What was exciting about it was that I kept going through the lens with with me and my son of just being able to like what would it look like with a connection of just kind of just the old guy trying to get back in and show he still got it with his kid and like having that kind of dynamic because that is literally like me and my son like most of the time playing this game. It's like, Dad, you're not doing this right. Dad, that's not the way to go. You're in the nether, you can't find that material there, like all these different things, right, where I'm constantly getting schooled and like having this humbling moment when it comes to gaming and still trying to prove that I got it. So definitely um that was something that went into my successful pitch because one of the editors pointed out, it's really cool, with Minecraft being around as long as it has been, it's finally in a space where it's like a multi-generation game where parents and kids can have that kind of dynamic where you know old timers can be can say that back in my day we didn't have armadillos on the in the game and have all those fun conversations about how it's transitioned. So yeah, that was kind of the thing that took off, and then it just so happened that just like with the personal dynamics at home that that was the strongest pitch and the one we all felt really good about. We just took it from there and running with it.
Yeah, that actually leads me to my next question because I thought that you did just a tremendous job with like the family dynamics. Not even, I mean, obviously the father and the son play probably the most crucial role throughout the course of the novel, but you've got this lovely brother sister relationship because sometimes they're fighting, but for the most part, they have each other's back. And then you've got, the mom who's not really on screen per se, but she's still like heavily involved with the family, of course. And then you've got this granny who's living with them for a while. And I just loved the family dynamic because you could tell like the family was dealing with issues and problems, but they weren't about the family unit. The family unit was strong and they were dealing with life. And so anyway, I just thought that that was beautiful. So it sounds like the family dynamic was always part of the plot idea for this book, if the father-son was kind of central for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I really appreciate you pointing that out too. I think a lot of times, like in my writing, I try to strive for you know families being families, but not necessarily having all their conflict because we know we got to have forms of conflict in some element to
Sure.
make for a story. But I think I don't necessarily always want that conflict or that tension rooted in trauma or rooted in some of the painful experiences. I'm not saying that there's no place for that. It's important that we delve like a lot of the things that kids are going through, because kids unfortunately are going through like very real adult stuff, in their lives. And I wanted to make a space, and I think I try to do this with all my work if I'm just like being honest about it, where it's like, yes, you can have drama, you can be messy, but kind of reinforcing and establishing, that bedrock and like a initial trust in each other, even if that trust is shaken, or even if you're just having a bad day, or all those nuances, just life, like you said. Um, that those kinds of dynamics are important to me because I think that being able to show those a lot of times. And I say this as a father who's always, looking for nuggets and little, dad wisdom to show with the kids, so they can roll their eyes at me. But I think sometimes like with myself, knowing that I'm like an observational learner, like I've kind of just picked that up over time. It's like this is how I really like absorb information. I think a lot of times, seeing how that can play out in a book, that can be like a useful tool for kids, and even for parents, where it's just like, gosh, I don't know how to get through to this kid, um, but they're really focused on this thing or this part of this game. Uh, Going back to my son, we've had some of our deepest conversations because we're just gaming, we're doing something else. It's not something where I'm like, son, we're going to sit down and talk about this deep thing because I need you to know all of my wisdom. It just pops out where he's like, man, this thing happened in summer camp today, dad. And then we're just talking, right? So I think getting a chance to kind of recreate some of the successful dynamics that I've got to experience in the book is cathartic and hopefully instructive to readers, and just helps make for a realistic family experience as people are going through the story itself.
Yeah, I love that so much because especially over the last decade, it's just seemed to me like some middle grade has gotten very dark. And while I do think that stories are needed to help children who might be in difficult situations, it does seem like a lot of it's just become, I don't know, more heavy is maybe the phrase
Sure,
I'm looking
sure.
for. Yeah. And so I love that because yeah, we need the hopeful stuff too, and the more uplifting viewpoint on things. Like you said, I didn't even think about the modeling aspect of it, but yeah, of course, we would want to be like, that's how I want my family to be with each other. And I can see how this kid is talking to his dad. Maybe I can try that too. I love that spin on it. So with that in mind, I guess it can be hard to find that balance between the conflicts and yet wanting to show healthy relationships. Do you have any tips for our writers on maybe how to at least start with creating a family dynamic that way?
Oh wow. I think I get to cheat a lot of in being a parent, and just trying to be an actor, trying to do the best that I can. I think you made a great point. I think with just like how sometimes when we just kind of look at the overall landscape, that things can like kind of teeter in a direction where it can get more grim, can get more dark. I tend to I might get laughed at by having my stuff be a little bit more on the rah rah side and a little bit lighter. Um, but having an idea that there's like a continuum, right, of stories, and finding a finding a place like where a particular kind of story can fit versus like, oh, this is everything that's selling right now and this is everything we should do, so it's like I'm going to do more of that. I, Sometimes I think it's important to just like see trends. You're never supposed to write to trend. um, See trends, see what's happening, and then find your space. um, either if you're making a point that's across from it or if you're finding someplace in the middle. I think that's an important thing to say. I'm sorry, I segued myself to not answer your question. So I was thinking about that in the background.
No,
Um,
it's all good.
I think like, yeah, conflict is one of those things. I feel like lived experience, and this is just me personally, because it's so important to be an active reader. So for listeners, like I was one of the, and I'll be transparent about this. When I was early on in my writing career, I was one of those writers that was just like, oh no, I don't want to read widely because that's gonna influence my voice and all this stuff. Where it's just like, no, that's that may work for that approach may work for somebody else, but for me, having um just a huge toolkit, a huge reservoir of different ways to approach uh, connections, family relationships, tension, like all that different stuff. So reading widely, I guess, is the first point that I'm going to make, and then just like your lived experience too. Um, if you're not in a place where you're parenting, not all of us are parents as writers. Just being around kids, like seeing their outlook on the world, seeing how literal they can be. Like when I think about some of the conversations with my son, it's like me and my wife were like, we swear to God this kid is going to be a stand-up comedian, because he will say just the most off the wall stuff, because his brain is literally wired like different than any of the rest of us. So he's always got this different perspective, and having somebody like that in your house is um is so rewarding and frustrating because you're constantly having to rethink how you think and how you present information, right? So that's something that, while I'm actively navigating that relationship, like in real time, it also goes back in the tool chest for how how I approach character and how I think about characters that can be like radically different from each other, can find that common ground. So like as an exercise, like, for whatever tools when writers are creating characters, and they're uh, looking for those points of like where they are at their bedrock, like different from each other, but they're still connected. Like having, kind of interrogating those connections and how they work and uh, where they have to use different resources to make sure that they're communicating, and then finding places where their communication breaks down, like all those different things. It's like there's a million different permutations of how you can take that. And I think just knowing your characters like deeply on that level, like the way that I know my kids, that's like the best thing you can do for yourself. So it's like I think one of the I hate I'm sorry, I can't stand when I'm like, oh, here's the thing that I do, and I can't remember where I originally sourced it, because we all do our research and we
Yeah.
find things like, oh, this was a great tool. So I'm going to say this, and my apologies to whoever may have came up with this originally, but some oft repeated advice that I would repeat again is having that interview with your characters, right? There's
Mhm.
plenty of resources you can find out there that's like 50 questions to ask your character, 100 questions to ask your character. And like committing to that, uh, where it's something where it's like, what would your character eat for breakfast? Why would they not eat that? And like really having discussions where your character, it, this, your equilibrium kind of shifts, like the more you commit to those kinds of process changes, to where you're not putting into your character as much, is where your characters are starting to tell you,
Mm.
wouldn't do that. Actually, this is the way that I would say that, or this is how I would interact with this person, but this is how I would solve this problem. So yeah, I hope there's some bits in there. I'm going to wrap that up
Yes.
because I just keep going
Yeah,
forever.
no, that I think there were a lot of good nuggets in that. And I had to laugh when you talked about the literal the literal brain. My
Yeah,
my son is literal in a different way. I get corrected all the time. Like, what time is it? It's 9:57. And I'm like, it's 10 o'clock, you know? It's like he does
we are
not
people.
like to
I
round.
feel your pain. Yes, yes. It's like, Dad, why would you say it like that? Like we had to prep we had to prep teachers for like how he for just how he communicates. Like you can't use some forms of speech. Oh, I'm trying to think of an example. Um,
Oh, like where the idioms or whatever get taken very literally.
exactly, where it's like, it's like, no, Dad, you can't do that. Like, uh, if something comes to me, I'll think of it later. But yeah, idioms, like it's just like having to explain them. But then when he has that light bulb go off too, like that's very satisfying. So it's like just getting to teach him like these different nuances of language. Selfishly as a writer, I'm just like totally in my zone when that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh, let me grab a notebook.
Right, right.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. And I do want to make sure our writers can find you on the internet and in all the places and things like that. So you have a website and you're on some socials. Can you tell us how we can connect with you?
For sure. And just thank you again. This has been such a gift. Just, oh my gosh, Sarah, I appreciate getting to talk about it. And thanks for your platform.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for me, DaVaunSanders.com is where folks can connect. That is, probably need to go update it right now. But yeah, it's
Isn't
usually
that
on,
always the case though?
it's always, yeah, all the churn behind the actual writing that, oh yeah, I need to go do that. And my agent will send me a polite email about getting done. Um, But yeah, DaVaunSanders.com, that is probably what I would ask people to go to the most, just because there's a newsletter sign up there.
Mm,
I think we've all seen in these past several years how turbulent social media can be, and who's on what platform. And then if people want to take a break from platforms, right, that's a great way to stay connected, because I know sometimes I get exhausted with my feed and I'm just not there.
yeah.
Um, for people who are on socials, I would say that Instagram is probably my top. So there's going to be book news and then just like random family stuff and whatever I'm obsessing about in the moment. I'd say my next is probably on TikTok for however long it lasts. I'm trying to grow there. It's been fun, like making videos and stuff and getting into it. And then lastly, I'm probably connected on Twitter, third most. I still call it Twitter just because.
I do too. It's fine. We all still call it Twitter, like our rebellion.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, for those, I think those three are my top. So if anybody follow me on there, say hi, and always love to just chop shop and talk about books.
Awesome, awesome. And writers will have links to those places that you can find them easily. And I did also want to mention that DaVaun's books are featured in the KidLit Summer Camp Book Fair. So you can find them all there as well. And will there be any books coming up that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, I am delighted to say that I am just buried in edits for the follow up to Keynan Masters and the Peerless Magic Crew. So that second book will be next year. I don't want to put out a release date in case
Sure.
things take a left-hand turn, but we're looking at winter of 2025. So if all things go well and I stay on task, then we should have a follow-up for that. That's been a fun story to write. I will warn anybody who dives into it. It has a massive cliffhanger. So without spoiling, but just be prepared for that because I've had some readers just like, "Hey, that wasn't right. You shouldn't do that." So if that's any kind of a hook for anybody who's into a different twist on a magic school on that trope, like feel free to dive in. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you again for your time and for sharing your expertise and your experience with us.
Delighted to. Thank you again for having me.
Yes, we'll see you again another time, writers. Bye.